Trump's assault on the rule of law is where we start today with former United States District Judge Mark Wolf. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Nicole. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you and to some of the American people.
What have the last 36 hours been like since your piece in The Atlantic dropped?
It's been a whirlwind. For the last 45 years as a federal prosecutor, as the last 40 of those as a federal judge, I've been limited to what I can say, to what I properly say in the courtroom. I've been overwhelmed by the reaction to my piece in The Atlantic, including the invitation to speak with you. It's been very encouraging in a way, because as you saw in my piece, I expressed some skepticism about what I'm striving to do in this new chapter will be successful, although I think it's important to try and to work with many others to try to protect our rule of law and democracy in the United States. The response I've received gives me greater hope than I had 36 hours ago.
One of the things that I worked in the government, and one of the things that I understand from covering the Trump story for 9 years, well, one is that my brain will probably be studied for having to cover the Trump story for 9 years. But the other is that for every person like you, for whom entering the public debates around policy and politics was once unthought of, there are hundreds, and probably in your case, thousands others. Can you just tell me what the judiciary as a body, as an institution, experiences when there are threats and menacing tweets and posts coming at them, to say nothing of the actual intimation of violence, pizzas sent in the name of Judge Esther Salas's murdered son, Daniel? I mean, the climate is almost impossible to adequately cover, but what has it been like these last 9 months for judges?
The experience of being threatened is deeply disturbing. Those of us who become federal judges to varying degrees, and maybe me because I came from being a federal prosecutor to a higher degree, understand that it comes with the territory. And while it's very disturbing to us, it's particularly disturbing to members of our family who didn't sign up for this. I've been threatened in the past by people who are crazy, and also by others who were, I believe, were in positions of official responsibility. And I don't think that the threats affect how any judge performs his or her work, but it does make it more difficult, more anxious, and particularly imposes harms or anxieties on people close to us.
What is your message to the American people about the importance of the judiciary when you see the Congress, and let's leave aside their policy preferences, but their abdication of the functions of Congress, whether it's making declarations of war or making decisions about tariffs? What burden does that place on the judiciary?
I think it imposes an even higher responsibility on the judiciary to properly perform its functions. As you know, Nicole, our Constitution is based on Lord Acton's axiom, power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And therefore, we have a system that divides power and creates checks and balances. Under the Constitution, under the Declaration of Independence and Constitution, all power is in the people of the United States. Some of that power is delegated to elected officials, and it's the role of the courts to hold those officials to the limits of their power. It's also a shared responsibility with the Congress. And while I'm not a political I think that there's fair criticism that Congress has not served as intended as an effective check or balance for the executive, but has been abdicating some of its responsibilities. And that makes the proper functioning of the courts even more important now than it always is.
Many setbacks for Donald Trump in court, from ICE agent conduct and enforcement to the ongoing food benefits clash in the shutdown. And we're joined by Emily Bazelon, the New York Times Magazine legal writer. Happy Friday, Emily. How are you?
Hey, I'm pretty good, Ari. Nice to be here.
Great to have you. It was a big week on the elections. That's obviously driven a lot of news. We like to have you, especially on Fridays. And then I heard you would only talk law, not the elections. So here we are. We built this whole segment for you. What do you see in the courts this week at a time where there do seem to be headwinds against the administration?
Yeah, we've seen at this point more than 100 judges rule against the Trump administration's policies of mandatory detention for people who ICE picks up, and just increasing, I think, dismay from judges about the tactics that ICE is using on the street. We've now seen this, in Portland, in Washington, in Chicago, where the administration comes in and they make assertions in court, and then witnesses come and talk about what's actually happening. And those two things are really different from each other. And the judges can see it. And this judge, who we saw this week ruling on Chicago, said that the government was lying. In particular, that the ICE official who's supposed to be in charge said that he got hit with a rock before he threw canisters of tear gas. And that just wasn't true from the video. So this idea of the judges really scrutinizing the facts on the ground and testing the administration's claims, it's so important. I mean, Ari, as you know, courts are for finding facts. That's what judges do. And you can really see them upholding that standard. And it does not go well so far for the Trump administration when they do that.
Right, and this DOJ is strained in more than one way. It's defending what sometimes look like long shot or losing cases, and that's always been the DOJ's job, as long as they don't violate their oaths when they have a government to defend in court, while they're on offense with very flimsy cases against Trump's opponents. And then you have the question of their overall credibility. There is a deference in many cases, especially national security, that judges give, and yet you just reminded everyone why they're blowing that up. And if that continues, you get to the Supreme Court, and even apart from who appointed whom, you may have more skepticism on the rationale. The ICE agents are obviously busy. Here's a headline that the detainee population is now at a record high, and it's up 70% since January. Since Mr. Trump took office, they note the previous high was in his first term in 2019, when they held 56,000 detainees. I mentioned that because this is something that came up when I interviewed Stephen Miller and others before they came back into office. They view this partly as a messaging effort, that you have to do more so that it's harder to be here or get in here or stay here. But at the end of the day, those numbers are also striking because you are not going to change the national labor force when the number is 50 or 70,000.
That's right. I mean, there's always this kind of push and pull with immigration, right? And as long as there are jobs here and people can work those jobs, whether they have documents or not, people are going to want to come. Now, it is true that there are far fewer people crossing the border. But what the Trump administration is trying to do is to get people to leave. And there's just a limited amount that even tens of thousands of people in detention is going to accomplish when people are still working. And of course, there is a kind of broader solution to all of this that Congress has not yet agreed on. But if you have more people who have permits to work here legally, then they can work those jobs legally. And that is one way of just sort of straightening out these dynamics. But instead, we have this current situation where we have no comprehensive immigration reform, and then we have these really quite brutal tactics on the ground.